Okay, for today, we are doing ash.kaashh. I'm doing a face reading on ash.kaashh to see what her facial analysis is. And her overall rating is a 6.4. How rare is that? That is 1 in 15 people. So that percentage wise will be the top 6 percentile. Her side facial score is at 33% for facial harmony. Her front facial score is at 84% for facial harmony. Her total facial harmony score is at 64%. Her facial dimorphism is a 7. So that's how feminized her face is. Her body fat factors is a 4.5. Her miscellaneous features is a 9. And the tier list is to the right side. Tier 1, ideal. Tier 2, near ideal. Tier 3, normal. Tier 4, slight flaw. Tier 5, flaw. Tier 6, huge flaw. Tier 7, breaks harmony. And then for her body fat, I gave her a 4.5, even though she's not a 4.5 for her body fat. This is from 1 to 10, and she does have a lot of chubby cheeks, so that's the reason why her body fat factors in the face is a 4.5. Overall facial assessment breakdown. So these are the things that I noticed that are big flaws, I guess you can say. And yeah, so the nose is way too downturned, and preferably it should be upturned in the side view profile. The nasal protrusion of her nose is not protruded enough, and the height of the nose is way too long compared to the width of the nose. All lip measurements in the side view profile was unideal because the bottom lip was more protrusive than the upper lip. So her nose is too downturned, is not protrusive enough, and her lips, her bottom lip is more protrusive than her upper lip when it's supposed to be in reverse, where the upper lip has to be more protrusive than the bottom lip. So overall, her lips were a flaw in general. The rarity scores of other celebrities, to give y'all guys an idea. Her eye separation ratio, so how far apart are her pupils compared to the cheekbone width, and it is at 47.6%, which is within the ideal range, so that is a tier 1. Her facial thirds is also ideal and is also favorable. What I mean by favorable is that for a female face, the mid third is supposed to be the longest, which it is at 35%, and 33 for the top, 30 for the bottom, and it should not deviate more than 3% from 33%, which it does not, so this is ideal. Her canthal tilt is at 8 degrees, so this is ideal. Her facial width to height ratio, this indicates how compact is the mid-face ratio, and it is very compact at 2, and this is ideal. Her jaw frontal angle, so this is the angle of the front of the jaw, and hers is at 100 degrees, and usually females do have more flatter jaw angles. So this is still near to ideal, but it's not ideal, but it's still near to it. And I will say, if she does lose a little bit of body fat, she might be able to have a more of an ideal jaw angle, but still overall this is not a bad jaw angle. Her cheekbone high settiness, how high set is her cheekbones, and this is the highest set I've seen so far at 100 degrees or at 100%, and 100% cheekbones is ideal. Bigonial width, her bigonial width, so how wide is her jaw relative to her cheekbones, and this is a tier 3. Tier 3 is within the normal range, but not within the ideal range. Her jaw width is not wide enough compared to her cheekbones because she does have very protrusive cheekbones. So if her jaw width was just a bit wider, it would have been within the ideal range. Her total facial height to width ratio, so how long is her face compared to the width of her face, and it is at 1.3, which is in the ideal range, and it is a tier 1. Her chin to filtrum ratio, so the filtrum is on the lines that y'all see on top, and the chin is the lines that y'all see on the bottom, and it should have a ratio that is between 2 to 2.55, and she does have a ratio that is between 2 to 2.55, so this is considered to be ideal. Her neck width. So how wide is her neck relative to her cheekbones? And it is, or relative to her head size or her head width, is 72%, which is near ideal. If her neck was just slightly a bit longer, it would be ideal at 75%. So she is very close to the ideal range, but not there yet. Her mouth to nose width ratio, so the ratio of her nose compared to her mouth. So when we compare her mouth to her eyes, it should be on the colored portion of the eyes, and which it is within the colored portion of the eyes. But we have to remember that her eyes is a bit wider set, just slightly a bit wider set, but it's still within the normal range. And her nose should fall into the creases of the inner eye, which it does fall into the crease of the inner eye. But relative to the mouth, it is slightly a bit too small at 1.77, so that is a slight flaw. So her nose is a bit smaller than her mouth. Her mid-face ratio is a tier 1, so she does have a good mid-face ratio and everything does align, and it should be between 1 to 1.11 or 1 to 1.1, which it does fall into, so that is ideal. Her eyebrow high settiness, how high set is her eyebrows relative to the eye line at 0.76, so that's 76%, and that is ideal, which means that her eyebrows are mid to low set, which is ideal. Her eye spacing, it should be one width eyes apart, and her eye spacing is exactly one width eyes apart, so that is also ideal. Her eye aspect ratio should be ideal too, at a tier 1 at 2.9, which means that her eyes are almond shaped but not too narrow. Her lips to her lower lip to upper lip ratio is also ideal at 1.5, and it is a tier 1, and this is ideal. And her upper lip should be slightly smaller than her lower lip. So her lower lip is supposed to be bigger in size compared to her upper lip. And this is the length of it. We're talking about the length. It should be longer than the upper lip, which it is at 1.5. Her deviation from her mid-face compared to her jaw frontal angle, these angles should be very close, which it somewhat is at 8 degree difference, and this is a tier 2, and a tier 2 is near to ideal, so this is not a big flaw by any means. And yeah, her eyebrow tilt is at 16 degrees, and this is also ideal, and you don't want it to be too high and you don't want it to be too low, which hers is pretty much in the middle, and this is perfect. Her bitemporal width, this is the width of the forehead. You don't want your forehead to be too wide or too small, and hers is near the smaller end portion of things, so this is going to be a slight flaw, but by no means this is a large flaw or anything like that. It just, her cheekbones are very protrusive, so therefore everything else has to be that much wider in order to harmonize that well, if that makes any sense. So this is at 78%, and this will be a slight flaw. Her lower third proportions is at 33%, which is ideal, and her ipsilateral alar angle is at 92 degrees, and this is perfect. So this means that her eyes is not too wide set, and also her other eye measurements are perfect as well, like her eye separation ratio was perfect, and her one eyes apart was perfect. So from those two combinations, you can infer that this one is also going to be within the ideal range as well. So her eyes are 100% perfect, no flaws within the eye area. Her gonial angle is a little bit obtuse at 140 degrees, and this is not ideal by no means at a tier 5 score. So how long is the ramus to mandible ratio? And this is the ratio between the ramus and the mandible. The ramus is 65% of the mandible's length, And what that means is that she does have a pretty long ramus for a female, and this will be ideal. Her submental cervical angle is at 106 degrees, and this is her normal, regular, everyday posture, so I'm glad I got the angle for it. And this is near to ideal. Um, it's not all the way ideal yet, but it's very close to it, and the ideal is 105. Hers is 106, so this is not a flaw at all. And yeah, and also I thought she did have a very high hyoid, but I guess since she has a very good posture and her neck is up straight, that's probably why the angle is the way it is. Her nasal facial angle. All right, so it's the inner angle from the nasion to the chin, and this angle does not take into account her facial convexity, so it's just a pure measurement between the chin protrusion and the nose protrusion. And unfortunately, she does have a good amount of chin protrusion, but not enough nasal protrusion. And from this measurement at 25 degrees, her nose is not upturned and she doesn't have enough protrusion, like I said again when I did my breakdown. So, this is the reason why her nasal facial angle is not ideal and it is a slight flaw. Her nasal labial angle. So this measurement will determine how downturned or how upturned her nose is, and is at 89 degrees. And this is very downturned for a female. And another thing too is females usually have protrusive upper lip. She doesn't have a protrusive upper lip, and usually when you have a protrusive upper lip, the angle gets even tighter, but for some reason she doesn't have a protrusive upper lip, so the angle is not going to get even tighter, but the angle is still tight. So that tells me how downturned her nose is in respect to her face. So that tells me that her nose is pretty downturned. Her orbital vector is neutral, so I gave her a tier 3, which is within the normal range. So her eyes are not too deep set, and is not too protrusive. It's just like in the middle. Her total facial convexity is at 145 degrees, and this is within the ideal range. Her mental labial angle is at 108 degrees, and this is within the ideal range as well. She does have a very protrusive bottom lip, so I can see why, and she does have a bit of a chin as well, so I can see why this angle is within the ideal range for her. Her facial convexity from the nasion, so instead of going from the glabella like I did last time, this one is from the nasion, and from the nasion it's at 158 degrees, and her facial convexity is a bit too rounded. So this going from instead of going from the glabella and going to the nasion is going to make it even more rounded. So therefore, it's not going to be ideal. And uh, her facial convexity to the nasion is at 158 degrees, which is completely outside the range by 10 degrees, and this pretty much tells me that her facial convexity is a bit too rounded. Her nasal projection is at 0.45, which is 45% of the nasal bridge, and that tells me that her nose width is not protrusive enough. So her nose is not protrusive enough, especially for a female. So this is still within the normal range, but it's not within the ideal range. Her nasal width to height, so the length versus the width of the nose, and her length is very long, but the width is very short, like I said, with the protrusion. So she does have a very long nose compared to her face, and this is still within the normal range, but is not ideal at 60% of the width. Or my fault, 60% of the length. So the width is 60% of the length. So this is another lip measurement. This tells me how protrusive her lips are in respect to her nose, nasal protrusion, and her chin protrusion. So it goes from the chin to the nose. So the rictus elon is unideal. The bottom lip is supposed to be 2 millimeters behind, and the upper lip is supposed to be 4 millimeters behind, and this is not ideal at all. So this is a flaw. The H line goes from the upper lip down to the chin, and the bottom lip should barely be touching the line. And for this reason, the bottom lip is past the line. That's why I said her bottom lip is too protrusive, and this is unideal as well. Her S line going from the clamella, right? So kind of like in between the nose down to the chin, and the upper lip is supposed to touch the line barely, which it does, and the bottom lip is supposed to barely touch the line as well, and it goes past the line again, and this is unideal. Her burstal line goes from the base of the nose, right, or I guess you can call it the nasion, to the bottom chin, and the upper lip is supposed to be 3.5 millimeters past the bottom lip, or at least 3 to 2 to the bottom lip, and is not that at all. So the bottom lip is just way too protrusive compared to the upper lip. So all of her lip measurements are off. Her nasal mental angle, so this is ties into the nasal protrusion compared to the chin protrusion, and it ties in also to the facial convexity as well. And since her facial convexity is a bit rounder, it is going to help with this measurement as well. So she does have it at 132 degrees, which is at the upper echelon of the measurement and is within the ideal range at 132 degrees. Her gonium to mouth relationship is at the normal range because it's within her mouth line. So it's not below the mouth line and it's not above the mouth line. The gonium is, or the gonium bone, I should say, is at the mouth line, as you guys can see right there. So this is not a flaw, and this is not something that's ideal. So it's pretty much in between. Her relation relative to the Frankfurt plane angle. So how protrusive is her jaw relative to her face, and her bottom chin does pass the nasion, and it also passes the glabella, which is also preferable too. So not only does it pass the nasion, but it also passes the glabella. And trust me when I say this, a lot of guys do not have chins that actually passes the glabella, or I should say the brow ridge. Let me just say brow ridge. And for her to have this is really preferable, and it's a good trait to have. Her brow ridge inclination, so how forward back is her forehead, and this is also ideal at 12 degrees, so it's not too forward back. This is within the, I guess you can say, the female range of things. And once it gets higher than 13%, that's when it becomes a little bit more masculinized. And at 12 degrees, this is perfect, and this is also a tier 1. Her nasal tip is at 121 degrees. Ideally should be around 100 and I think 817, and this is just 4 degrees off or away from it, and I gave it a tier 2, so her nose is not too bulbous at the tip of it, and yeah, will be near ideal. So she is a 6.4, which is 1 in 15, like I said again, and excuse me, that is around 6th percentile of the population, or you could say of females. Let's just go with females. So she is the top 6th percentile of females. So like I said again, to give you an example, if you have 100 people in your classroom, she's going to be, let's say 100 people within her age range in the classroom, she's going to be the top 6% best looking females there. That's just what it is. And the reason why she could have got a higher score is because her face, her side profile view is not that good. It's only at 33%, while her front is at, I think, like 84%, which is good. If you want me to do a facial analysis of you, of your own face, I'm gonna have my email down in the description, and you can message me or you can email me, and we can go from there as well. So yeah, so this is ash.kaashh. Tell me what y'all think about her face rating, and I thought she was gonna get a little bit higher, but hey, who knows? And yeah, I'm out.